Well, as a friend of mine once said, once upon a time, I was a liberal. I'm not quite as good at the smoldery blue steel sort of stare as Brandon is, but I'll do my best. We are raised to be leftists. We are raised to be loyal soldiers to the Democratic Party. Even when I was in high school, in public school, the history teacher took the class on an illegal trip to Cuba to teach about the joys of socialism. And when they asked him why, he was like, "Oh, well, I'm a communist." Of course. This school, they had no debate club, no civics club, but there was communism club. So, it is just impounded in our heads at an early age. I had always been a liberal, but I never really bought into this whole collective shit. I was always a rebel. I was always different. Even in terms of being gay, I never felt accepted by the gay community. I never felt like I was part of them. I always felt judged, and they're mainly all about groupthink and conformity and looking, speaking, acting, thinking exactly as they do, and that was just never what I was about. So I guess my red pill story is a little bit darker than some people's. So I guess I'll just say that in summer of 2012, I had a home invasion sort of thing, and I was raped. Sorry, this is weird to talk about so openly. Without going into all the details, I guess, I was living in an apartment in Brooklyn with like 5 roommates, and, they were all leftist activists and all into drugs. And this one guy who was my roommate at the time was very closeted, and so, they moved out, and I guess he kept his keys. I was there alone, 5 in the morning, But anyway, the point is, at the time, all of my friends were radical leftists, male feminists, social justice warriors, rape activists, the works. Those are favorite words. That's all they ever talked about. Rape culture. Ugh, I hate that term, by the way. So I really thought that going to these people, like, wow, they're experts in rape. They, it's all they talk about. That I really thought they would support me and have my back and help me seek justice and all that. That wasn't quite the reception I got. I learned very quickly that when this happens to a guy, nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody will let you talk about it. Nobody cares. I would try and I needed to talk about it, with my friends, and nobody cared. They would smile, nod, and immediately change the subject. Yet then every moment of every day I would be told by them, well, imagine how women feel, and women have it worse, and, these women, they can't walk down the street without being raped, and, oh, these women, they get raped, and it ruins their lives, and women, it's as if they were telling me to just shut up because women have it worse. I just couldn't believe the hypocrisy of these people. At this time, too, it was all in the news about comedians and rape jokes and wanting to ban that. So these same people then every day were just talking about how, they're protesting some comedian and rape jokes, and rape is never funny, rape is never funny. And I just thought to myself in that moment, I was like, I don't know how, I don't know when, but someday I'm going to find a way to laugh about what happened to me, just to spite them. So it was this time, too, that I noticed how politically correct everyone was becoming, that you could not say a word without being called some sort of name. This one time, I had gone on a really awkward date with this guy where he asked if he could kiss me. So when I told friends about this or wrote a post that, it's very unattractive when someone asks to kiss you, these same people then jump down my throat. You're a sexist, and you need affirmative consent, and you're advocating rape. You're a rape apologist. Knowing what I had just gone through. So this is how they treat people that they claim to champion, But anyway, there were a couple of instances that led to my red pilling. So if that was the first one, the second was this. Now, after this happened, obviously I had to get out of that apartment. I couldn't be there. But it was the middle of the month. I had nowhere to go. I had no money. I couldn't find an apartment. So I ended up calling some room rental service where you can just move in that day. So they said they had a place super cheap, Lower East Side of Manhattan, great neighborhood. I was like, perfect, I'll take it. So I show up there with my things. It's in the projects. I lived in the projects for about a month and a half. Now, let me tell you something. You cannot live in the projects for any amount of time and come out of there a liberal. It's not possible. I think I was very ignorant as to just how dangerous it was. In retrospect, I really don't know how I survived, especially looking like an emaciated albino alien vampire like I do. But I think people don't realize just how bad the situation is in places like that. It's bad. The people there are so dangerous, assaulting people, mugging people. There's piss and shit everywhere and, needles hanging out of their arms. And those were the good ones, So anyway, the woman who I was renting the room in her apartment, she was 26 years old, 4 kids from 4 different fathers, most of them incarcerated. And, when I asked her, what do you do? She said, I'm in the system. As her parents were, as her kids will be, That's the situation. When you are put on welfare, you are meant to stay there. So, and she would tell me about how, like, the buzzwords she would use to get more money, and how, if you have more kids, you get more money. And, meanwhile, every day she would come home with shopping bags of, like, Xboxes and iPads, and her TV went from, like, the floor to the ceiling. The thing is, though, you cannot blame these people. They have never known anything else. You are born into the system, What Democrats do is that they basically get people hooked on drugs, the drug of free money, And then they say that if you want your fix, you have to keep voting for us. I've seen firsthand the destruction caused by these Democrat policies, and it's bad. It's very frustrating trying to discuss this subject with liberals about the welfare state, because they are coming from a place that is theoretical, that they've heard about in a classroom. I've lived this, and people do not realize just how toxic it is and how generational it is and how people are just being set up for failure. It's bad. So anyway, I eventually clawed my way out of there. I found my own place. And now I had to deal with all of these things that had happened. And I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult for a long time. I really struggled, and, I had a lot of depression and was sort of, almost like suicidal for a while. I still have a scar on my hand from all the nights I went to sleep clutching a knife. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Yes, it changed my views on the Second Amendment. But, I got better. I had to put the work in to be mentally well and be healthy. And, that's my responsibility. I'm not a victim. With these leftists, it's as if they encourage emotional instability. They want you to just stew in your victimhood, and you can't do that. We can't help the cards we're dealt in life. We can't help the things that happen to us. But whether you're a victim or a survivor is how you handle it, is how you play those cards, is what happens after. I eventually got through it and found my strength. And, and the thing is, the thing that made me feel better throughout this time were offensive off-color rape jokes. I would seek out everyone I could find, every comedian, and it is the only thing that, got me over it. And these are the things they want to ban. So anyway, these things sort of stayed in the back of my mind, but I never really connected the dots between them. So a couple of years went by, and now trigger warnings were everywhere. You could not read a news article without a trigger warning, especially on this subject. So, I'd put in all of this work to be strong and be healthy and be well-adjusted, and now I was being told that I'm some sort of victim who is too fragile and too damaged to even read a news article without a warning. So anyway, I'm a writer. So I had a blog at the time that was basically like short stories, funny things from my life. And I decided to write a blog about this whole experience, because I wanted to show a few things. I wanted to show that this happens to men. It happens to way more guys than anyone realizes. It just isn't talked about. There isn't the same level of education, And I also wanted to give a perspective of strength and humor and not victimhood, I wanted to show that people who've been through things like this in their life are tough, strong, resilient people. We are not these fragile, mentally ill China dolls that they'll have you believe. And I also wanted to call out the hypocrisy of these activists. So I wrote this blog, and within 48 hours, I had hundreds of messages from angry leftists and social justice warriors calling me every name in the world. How dare you write this? How dare you say you're not a victim? Women have it worse. How dare you call out these activists when you should be thanking them? Thanking them, that's funny. Telling me I'm making it up. But my favorite thing that they said was that simply by talking about how I fought back against my attacker, that I am marginalizing and victimizing anyone who didn't. First of all, where do they all learn to talk the same? They all say the same buzzwords. So according to them, I have no ownership over my life and my story to even talk about it. And this really showed me how liberals treat the people they claim to champion when one says something that they don't want to hear. these people, they didn't like how I was talking about it. They want their victims to be crying and quivering and shaking in a corner and dependent on them. And I was somebody who's standing tall, not crying, and saying, I don't need you. Fuck your trigger warnings. So the thing is, if the things that had happened years prior set off the little spark in my mind, this was the tank of gasoline on top of that, because this happened right as the election was heating up. It was like early 2016. So I'd always been very involved in politics. I went to Iowa to campaign for Obama in 2008. I voted for him 3 times. All my family are Democrats. So initially I was like, okay, I'll be for Bernie. But then I started researching things and realizing, wait, this doesn't add up. None of this makes sense. I voted for him very half-heartedly because I didn't know what else to do. And then I was like, okay, I'll be for Hillary. And then I fell down the rabbit hole of research, and I found out the history of the Democratic Party, and I found out things that I had no clue were going on all this time. I had been in a bubble for years of just watching MSNBC all day, and I was finding out things that I had no clue were happening. I didn't know that Obama took us from 2 wars to 7 wars. I didn't know that his cabinet was handpicked by Citigroup. I didn't know all of these things about the Clinton Foundation, all the things with foreign governments in Saudi Arabia and Morocco, and all of the corruption, all of the things have been going on for so long and were continuing to go on. And the thing is, all of these things that I was now learning were in such contrast to what I was hearing in the media and from friends and people saying, oh, you just hate her because she's a woman. When no, that was literally the only reason I even considered voting for her. If you put a moment of thought into all of the things and think about what have Democrats ever done for the people that they claim to champion? Even every ounce of gay rights that has been made the past decade has simply been undoing Bill Clinton's policies. My parents are both cancer survivors, and the cost of their health insurance doubled and tripled under Obamacare. They really got screwed by it. But it's as if it never even occurred to any of us, you don't have to vote Democrat. It is so programmed into you from school onwards that there are basically 2 identities that you can have in life. You're one or the other, Democrat or Nazi. And that doesn't work for me. My entire life, I was led to believe that if somebody isn't a leftist and isn't a Democrat, that they are just a homophobic, racist, sexist Nazi. And I always believed that because I had never met anybody in New York who wasn't a Democrat. But during that summer of 2016, I started making new friends, and I started meeting all of these people who were conservatives and libertarians and Trump supporters and Republicans. And I realized that they are nothing of the sort, that we have most things in common, even where we disagree. And person after person that I would meet honestly showed me more kindness and more acceptance than these liberals ever did, and certainly more than the gay community ever did. And it really showed me how wrong these narratives are that are impounded into our heads. So, long story short, or well, not short, but long story long. I'm sorry you guys for rambling so long. But anyway, I left the Democratic Party and I became very outspoken against the left because I think that these are toxic, bad, regressive ideas that are bringing us backwards and making every group hate each other, and they need to be actively fought against, especially when you think about how much power they have. They control every cultural institution. So anyway, in doing so, I lost all my friends. I lost probably about 90% of my friends. For me, at least, it was 1,000 times harder coming out as a centrist against the left than it was coming out as gay. And then I found people like Dave Rubin and Christina Hoff Sommers, people who were finally saying the things that I had been feeling for years, but just didn't have the language to be able to identify them as regressive leftists, and that's what they are. The thing is, what Democrats do that is so genius but so evil is that they fuse their partisan policies together with people's identities. So if you don't want the Christian baker to be forced to bake the gay wedding cake, you just hate gay people. If you oppose, things like illegal immigration or the welfare state or whatever, you just hate black people. If you don't vote Hillary, you just hate women. And this is how they are able to control people, by instilling fear. If you don't go along, if you ask questions, if you don't just agree with them, then you will be these names they call you. And what I would really say to anybody who is like-minded that's afraid to speak out is to remember one thing. There's no such thing as an insult. Something is either true or it is not true. So it doesn't matter what they call you. because a lot of people are afraid of being called all these names. I've been called every name you can imagine. I mean, I'm a gay, half Jew, rape survivor, all these things that they're supposed to stand for me. I should have property of the DNC tattooed on my ass. But you see how they treat anybody who asks questions, anybody who challenges their dogma. It is a religion. And what I would really say to anybody who still supports this is, where are things better? Where is one thing where we're better off? Where is one instance where people are more unified or get along better or anything of the sort? I only see negative things. What good is this doing? Who is this helping? And if nothing, maybe it's time to walk away and try something else. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that I think one thing that's really important for us who have walked away from the left is for us to not then take on the qualities that we walked away from, to not buy into groupthink and tribalism. I think it is incumbent on all of us to improve the right and improve the Republican Party and take back the center. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. So sorry for my long ramblings, but anyway, as a Russian bot, in conclusion, I will just say, do svidaniya.